I always find the basement smelled like 40 years of Ohio winters and broken dreams. I was down there cleaning out Mom's old junk when I found it. A hidden safe behind the ancient furnace, painted the same industrial gray as everything else in this tomb. The combination lock stared at me like a challenge. My birthday. Of course it was my birthday. Inside, wrapped in plastic like evidence from a crime scene, was a letter in Mom's careful handwriting. Evan, if you're reading this, they finally found you. The people who matter always do. What's inside this envelope will remind you who you really are, not the man they tried to break. 'Including Tessa Morrison, my ex-wife's best friend since childhood, the woman who'd whispered poison in Valerie's ear for years. Bing. 3 months earlier, I was standing in a California courtroom, watching my wife of 18 years smile like she'd just won the lottery, which, in a way, she had. The court awards the family residence at 4,247 Ocean View Drive, valued at $4.2 million, to Mrs. Valerie Chen. Excuse me, Mrs. Valerie Morrison. The judge's voice echoed in the marble chamber like a death sentence. Full custody of the minor child, Marina Morrison, is also awarded to the mother. Valerie's lawyer, a shark in a $1,000 suit, leaned over and whispered something that made her laugh. That laugh, the same one that used to make me feel like the luckiest guy alive, now sounded like glass breaking. Ein fein rein rein kind fat ein kind toned, kind pint pint. California's a no-fault state, but when there's this much money involved, you'll never see Marina again, Valerie whispered as we filed out. Travis and I are going to give her the life you never could. Travis, her personal trainer, the muscle-bound moron who'd been helping her with her fitness goals for the past year. Apparently, those goals included screwing him in our bed while I was working 16-hour days trying to save my restaurant. The restaurant, another casualty of my spectacular failure as a human being. Evan's place had been my dream, a small Italian joint that served the kind of food that reminded people why they fell in love. But dreams don't pay divorce lawyers, and when Valerie cleaned out our joint accounts to fund her legal war, the dream died with everything else. In the courthouse parking lot, I saw Travis leaning against his pristine BMW, wearing a tank top in 60-degree weather because God forbid anyone miss those biceps. He was scrolling through his phone, probably updating his Instagram with another shirtless selfie. The rage hit me like a physical force. Before I knew what I was doing, I had my keys out, The scraping sound of metal on paint was surprisingly satisfying as I carved a deep groove from his driver's door to the rear bumper. Then another, and another. Hey, hey! Travis's voice cracked like a teenager's as he spotted me. I was already walking away, hands in my pockets, whistling. That night, alone in a motel room that smelled like disinfectant and defeat, I saw Valerie's Facebook post. A photo of her, Travis, and my 16-year-old daughter Marina toasting champagne in what used to be my living room. The caption read, "New beginnings with my real family. #blessed off #moving on." I was tagged in the post. The comments were already piling up. Good for you, Val. You deserve so much better. That guy always seemed like a loser. Marina's better off without him. Is that the restaurant owner who went bankrupt? Yikes. Marina had liked the post. My own daughter had liked a post celebrating my destruction. That's when I bought a one-way ticket to Ohio. The Rusty Anchor was the kind of bar where dreams went to die, and nobody asked questions about why you were drinking whiskey at 2 in the afternoon. Perfect for my current lifestyle. Rick Kowalski, the owner, was a former Cleveland cop who'd seen enough of humanity's worst to develop a philosophical approach to other people's misery. He poured drinks, offered the occasional grunt of sympathy, and kept the regulars from killing each other. In return, they pretended his bar wasn't slowly dying along with the rest of downtown Millfield. So let me get this straight, Rick said, polishing a glass that had seen better decades. Your wife takes the house, the kid, and probably half your future earnings, and you come back to Ohio to live in your dead mother's basement? When you put it like that, it sounds pathetic, I said, nursing my third whiskey of the day. Son, it doesn't just sound pathetic. Mrs. Haynes, my mother's former neighbor, had made it her personal mission to chronicle my fall from grace. I'd catch her peeking through her curtains whenever I came or went, probably updating her mental file on that Morrison boy who couldn't keep his wife happy. The worst part was the constant digital torture. Valerie seemed to take perverse pleasure in keeping me updated on her new life. Accidental group emails about vacation plans, photos of Marina and Travis bonding at the gym, updates about the renovations she was making to my house. Her house. The latest was a video Marina had posted to TikTok about having a deadbeat dad in Ohio. It had gone viral, actual viral. 2 million views of my 16-year-old daughter explaining to the internet why she was better off without her father. My mom finally got rid of the dead weight, she said to the camera, making that stupid pouty face all the kids do now. Like, he couldn't even keep his restaurant open. Now she's with someone who actually takes care of himself. The video cut to Travis doing pull-ups, because of course it did. The comments were a masterpiece of teenage cruelty. Your mom glowed up. Good for her. Dads who don't pay child support are the worst. Is your stepdad single? Asking for my mom lol. I wasn't behind on child support. I was paying every penny the court ordered, even though it meant living on ramen and whatever Rick let me eat at the bar in exchange for helping with inventory. But facts don't matter when the narrative is already written. That's when I started planning. The gym where Travis worked was called Iron Paradise, which told you everything you need to know about the kind of people who went there. All mirrors and chrome and protein powder, populated by people who thought bicep size was a personality trait. I signed up under a fake name, paid cash for a month, and started learning Travis's routine. The man was predictable as sunrise. Chest and arms on Monday, legs on Tuesday, back and shoulders on Wednesday. He had a protein shake at exactly 3:15 every day, mixed with some expensive powder he kept in his personal locker. The laxatives dissolved completely in water, tasteless, odorless, and with a delayed reaction time of about 30 minutes. I'd done my research. Wednesday afternoon, I watched from across the gym as Travis mixed his usual post-workout shake. He was showing off for a couple of college girls, making a big production of his precise nutritional timing and optimal muscle recovery protocols. 28 minutes later, he was sprinting for the bathroom. 35 minutes later, he was sprinting again. 42 minutes later, he was begging the front desk girl to call him a cab because he couldn't trust himself to drive home. The college girls were recording everything on their phones, laughing their asses off. By evening, Gym Bro Disaster was trending on 3 different social media platforms. My inner monologue was practically singing opera. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the alpha male in his natural habitat, crying in a public restroom because his bowels have declared independence. But Travis was just the opening act. The real target was Valerie herself. I'd kept in touch with a few people from our old social circle, including Janet Walsh, who worked as an administrative assistant at the marketing firm where Valerie had just started as a senior account executive. Janet had always been a gossip, and she was more than happy to share interesting details about office dynamics. The partners are really conservative, Janet told me during a phone call. They fired a guy last year just for having some inappropriate photos surface online. They're obsessed with their reputation. Anonymous tips are a beautiful thing, especially when they include time-stamped photos of an employee's inappropriate relationship with her personal trainer, taken in the company parking garage during lunch hours. Valerie was placed on administrative leave pending investigation within a week. The best part? She had no idea it was me. As far as she knew, I was just some pathetic loser drinking myself to death in Ohio while she lived her best life with Captain America. That illusion lasted exactly 3 days. The text came at 2 in the morning. I know what you did to Travis. You're not half as clever as you think. Watch your back. Unknown number. But something about the phrasing nagged at me. Too articulate for Travis, too direct for Valerie. Someone else was playing this game. The answer was in Mom's letter, the part 1, been too angry to process the first time I read it. Names, dates, and secrets going back 30 years, including a detailed account of how the Morrison family had helped cover up a drunk driving incident involving the Kowalski family in 1987. Not Rick Kowalski, his older brother Eddie, who'd killed a pedestrian while driving drunk and somehow managed to avoid jail time. The victim's family had been quietly paid off, the police report had been lost, and Eddie had moved to Florida to start fresh. The person who'd arranged all of this? Tessa Morrison's father, who was the town's district attorney at the time. And the person who'd been blackmailing my family for years over their knowledge of the cover-up? Tessa herself. Suddenly, everything made sense. Tessa's lifelong friendship with Valerie, her constant presence in our marriage, always ready with advice that somehow made things worse, her mysterious ability to afford a lifestyle that far exceeded her income as a small-town insurance agent. She'd been playing the long game, and I'd been too stupid to see it. The restaurant failure? Tessa had recommended the accountant who'd accidentally miscalculated our tax obligations, leading to the IRS problems that drained our savings. The marriage counselor Valerie insisted we see? Tessa's recommendation, and coincidentally, someone who specialized in helping women find the courage to leave toxic relationships. Even Travis wasn't random. Tessa had introduced them at a charity event, suggesting Valerie needed someone who could help her rediscover her strength. I'd been fighting the wrong enemy all along. Time to change tactics. Breaking into Travis's house wasn't as hard as the movies make it look, especially when the target is stupid enough to post his gym schedule on Instagram and hide his spare key under a fake rock that screamed, "Suburban moron lives here." His home gym was a temple to narcissism, mirrors on every wall, professional lighting, and about $10,000 worth of equipment he probably used to film workout videos for his social media followers. I started with the mirrors. A baseball bat makes a very satisfying sound when it connects with glass. The weights were next, not destroying them, just rearranging them into creative sculptures that spelled out words like pathetic and loser. I poured protein powder into the motor housing. It wouldn't hurt anyone, but it would create an expensive repair bill and a very embarrassing explanation to the warranty company. The piece de resistance was the note I left taped to his bathroom mirror. Not so alpha now, are you? Your girlfriend's husband says hello. I was loading my supplies back into the car when I heard Travis's BMW pulling into the driveway. Apparently his gym schedule wasn't as reliable as his Instagram suggested. Hey, someone's in my house. His voice carried that same crack of panic I'd heard in the courthouse parking lot. I was already moving, but Travis was faster than his protein-addled brain suggested. The chase lasted 3 blocks through suburban streets that all looked identical in the dark. I finally lost him by cutting through a construction site and doubling back to my car through a drainage ditch. The local news picked up the story 2 days later. Local fitness trainer's home vandalized in apparent domestic dispute. They interviewed Travis on camera, and he looked exactly like what he was, a scared little boy pretending to be a man. I just don't understand who would do something like this, he said, his voice shaking slightly. I'm a positive person. I help people achieve their fitness goals. I don't have enemies. The comments section was brutal. Looks like someone skipped brain day at the gym. Plot twist. It was his reflection that got tired of looking at him. Maybe if you didn't sleep with married women, that last comment got deleted within an hour, but screenshots are forever. But my real masterpiece was yet to come. The Ocean View Children's Hospital Charity Gala was Valerie's debut as Travis's official girlfriend. $500 a plate, black tie required, and all of coastal California's social climbers, pretending to care about sick kids while networking and showing off their plastic surgery. I'd kept my tuxedo from the old days. It still fit, mostly, and a fake mustache and reading glasses were enough to get past the volunteer staff checking invitations at the door. Rich people rarely look closely at the help. Valerie looked stunning, of course. She'd always been beautiful, but now she had that glow that comes from expensive treatments and not having to worry about money. Travis was beside her in a rented tux that didn't quite fit, looking like a kid playing dress-up in his father's clothes. They were seated at table 12, right in front of the main presentation screen. Perfect. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment. Travis's secret OnlyFans account hadn't been hard to find. The man used the same username for everything, and his privacy settings were about as secure as a screen door. The content was exactly what you'd expect. Poorly lit videos of him flexing and making bedroom eyes at the camera while bad electronic music played in the background. But the real goldmine was the private messages. Conversations with subscribers, including several married women from their social circle. Explicit photos, promises of private training sessions that had nothing to do with fitness. The charity's AV system was controlled by a laptop on a table near the kitchen entrance. The volunteer running it had stepped away for a smoke break, leaving everything unlocked and ready. I waited until the hospital administrator was halfway through his speech about the generous hearts that make healing possible before I made my move. The first image that appeared on the 20-foot screen was Travis in a leather thong, oil glistening on his abs, with the caption, "Who wants to see Daddy work out?" The gasps from the audience were audible, even over the microphone feedback. The second image was a screenshot of Travis's conversation with Mrs. Patricia Whitmore, wife of the hospital's biggest donor, discussing special arrangements for their personal training sessions. By the third image, Travis and two women I didn't recognize in what was clearly not a gym setting. People were pulling out their phones to record the chaos. Valerie's face had gone from shock to horror to a rage so pure it was almost beautiful. Travis was frantically trying to get someone's attention, pointing at the screen and shaking his head like a bobblehead doll having a seizure. I didn't. Someone hacked my. His voice carried across the suddenly silent ballroom as the microphone picked up his panic. The hospital administrator was frozen at the podium, unsure whether to continue his speech or run for cover. The AV volunteer had returned from his smoke break and was frantically trying to regain control of his laptop, while I slipped back into the crowd. The final image was the masterpiece, a composite of all Travis's most embarrassing moments, set to the tune of "My Heart Will Go On," entitled "The Titanic Sinking of Travis McKenna's Reputation." By the time security figured out what was happening, half the room was recording everything on their phones, and the other half was heading for the exits. Valerie had disappeared entirely, probably locked in a bathroom somewhere, having the kind of breakdown that requires professional intervention. Travis was left standing alone at table 12. His rental tux suddenly looking more like a costume from a community theater production of The Importance of Being Earnest. The local news covered it as charity gala disrupted by cyber attack. But social media told the real story. #TravisGate was trending within hours, and someone had already created a Wikipedia page for the Ocean View Hospital incident. But my satisfaction was short-lived. The next morning, I got a call from someone I hadn't expected. "Hello, Evan. I think it's time we talked." Tessa Morrison's voice was calm, controlled, and absolutely terrifying in its complete lack of emotion. "You've been having fun, haven't you? Playing your little games, thinking you're so clever. But you have no idea what you're actually dealing with. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in downtown Millfield. Neutral ground, public place, plenty of witnesses. I thought I was being smart. I was wrong about everything." Tessa looked exactly the same as she had at my wedding 18 years ago. Blonde, petite, and radiating the kind of wholesome Midwestern charm that made people trust her instinctively. She was drinking herbal tea and reading a paperback novel when I arrived. The picture of innocence. "Sit down, Evan. We have a lot to discuss." "You orchestrated all of this," I said, not bothering with pleasantries. "The affair, the divorce, everything." Orchestrated is such a dramatic word. I simply guided events toward their natural conclusion. She closed her book, some romance novel with a shirtless man on the cover. You were always going to fail, Evan. I just helped you fail faster. Why? What did I ever do to you? Her smile was arctic. Do you remember the summer of 2003? You were managing that little restaurant in Columbus, trying to make a name for yourself. I applied for a waitressing job. I had a vague memory of interviewing dozens of college kids that summer. The restaurant was understaffed, and I was desperate for reliable help. You told me I wasn't restaurant material, said I didn't have the right look for your establishment. Do you remember what you said when I asked what that meant? I didn't, but something cold was forming in my stomach. You said I was too wholesome for the kind of atmosphere you were trying to create, that customers wanted servers who were a little more worldly. You hired 3 other girls that day, all of them prettier than me, all of them with the kind of experience that came from working in bars and nightclubs. The memory was coming back now, fuzzy and unwelcome. I'd been 26, arrogant, and convinced that success meant creating the right image. The kind of casual cruelty that seems insignificant until someone spends 20 years planning revenge for it. That job would have paid for my last year of college. Instead, I had to drop out and move back home. But it taught me something valuable about how the world really works. So you decided to destroy my marriage. I decided to show Valerie who you really were. It wasn't hard. You did most of the work yourself. The long hours at the restaurant, the financial stress, the way you dismissed her concerns about your drinking. I just amplified things. She pulled out her phone and showed me a text thread that went back years. Messages between her and Valerie, documenting every fight, every disappointment, every moment of doubt in our marriage. Look at the timestamps, Evan. Every piece of advice I gave her, every suggestion about how to handle your behavior. It was all designed to make things worse. The marriage counselor who convinced her you were emotionally unavailable? My recommendation. The lawyer who encouraged her to go for full custody? My college roommate. Even Travis wasn't random. I've been grooming him for 2 years, convincing him that Valerie was this tragic figure trapped in a loveless marriage. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too warm. You're insane. I'm thorough. Do you know how easy it was to manipulate your restaurant's finances? A few suggestions about expansion, some recommendations for contractors who charge twice the market rate, an accountant who happened to make some very expensive mistakes? You thought you were making smart business decisions, but every choice was influenced by information I fed to Valerie, who passed it along to you. The blackmail. My mother's letter mentioned blackmail. Your family covered up a vehicular homicide, Evan. My father arranged the whole thing, and your mother kept the records. When she died, I thought those records died with her. Imagine my surprise when I realized she'd passed them on to you. So what happens now? Now you disappear. Go back to Ohio, drink yourself to death in that pathetic bar, and leave my friends alone. Your little revenge games are over. And if I don't, then I release the evidence about your family's involvement in Eddie Kowalski's cover-up. Your mother's reputation gets destroyed posthumously. You get charged as an accessory after the fact, and Marina learns that her father comes from a family of criminals. Is that really what you want? She was right, of course. I was beaten, outplayed, and completely screwed. Any rational person would have walked away. But I'd stopped being rational around the time my wife started screwing her personal trainer. You made one mistake, Tessa. Really? What's that? You told me the truth. The annual Millfield Heritage Festival was the kind of small-town event that existed mainly to give local politicians photo opportunities and sell overpriced funnel cake. This year, it had a special significance. Valerie, Travis, and Marina were attending as guests of honor, part of some charity initiative that Tessa had arranged to rehabilitate their image after the gala disaster. Perfect. I'd spent the past 2 weeks preparing, using every piece of information from my mother's files and everything I'd learned about Tessa's network of manipulation. The beauty of small towns is that everyone knows everyone, and secrets have a way of compounding over time. The festival's main stage was set up in the town square, with a microphone system that reached every corner of the event. Local bands, politicians, and community leaders would take turns addressing the crowd throughout the day. I waited until the afternoon, when the crowd was at its largest and everyone was gathered around the stage for the Community Heroes Recognition Ceremony. Valerie and Travis were seated in the front row, with Marina beside them looking miserable in the way only teenagers can manage. Tessa was at the podium, introducing the ceremony with her usual blend of false modesty and calculated charm. Today, we celebrate the people who make our community stronger through their generosity and dedication. That's when I walked onto the stage. The crowd was confused at first. Some random guy in jeans and a flannel shirt interrupting their wholesome community event. But the microphone was live, and my voice carried across the entire square. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to tell you about some real community heroes. People who've been working behind the scenes for years to make sure this town runs exactly the way they want it to. Tessa tried to grab the microphone, but I was bigger and angrier, and 18 years of suppressed rage had given me a strength I didn't know I possessed. My name is Evan Morrison, and I used to be married to that woman in the front row, the blonde one who's trying very hard to pretend she doesn't know me. For 18 years, I thought our marriage failed because I wasn't good enough. Turns out, it failed because her best friend spent 2 decades planning its destruction. The crowd was silent now, phones coming out to record what was clearly about to become the most interesting thing to happen in Millfield since the water tower fire of 1987. See Tessa Morrison? Yes, that's right. The woman who was just telling you about community values has been running a blackmail operation out of this town for 30 years. She's got files on half of you, and she's been using that information to control everything from business deals to marriages to political appointments. I pulled out copies of the documents from my mother's safe, holding them up for the crowd to see. The Kowalski cover-up in 1987. The Henderson land deal that mysteriously went through despite environmental concerns. The school board election where 3 candidates suddenly dropped out after reconsidering their priorities. All of it orchestrated by the same person who convinced my wife to destroy our family because I hurt her feelings 20 years ago. Tessa was trying to get security's attention, but the volunteer security for a small-town festival consisted of 2 retired cops who were more interested in hearing the rest of the story than stopping it. But here's the really beautiful part, I continued, warming to my theme. The man my ex-wife left me for, the muscle-bound moron in the front row who's currently turning red as a fire truck, he's been cheating on her since day one, not just with random women, with Tessa herself. The crowd gasped. Valerie's head snapped toward Travis, who looked like he was about to vomit. That's right, folks. While my wife thought she was upgrading to a better man, she was actually just the latest victim in a revenge plot that started before she was even involved. Travis has been reporting back to Tessa about everything. Valerie's finances, her insecurities, her plans for the future, all of it. I had photos, of course. Tessa and Travis together at a motel outside of town. Text messages discussing their arrangement. Bank records showing payments from Tessa to Travis for consulting services. And my daughter, I said, looking directly at Marina, who was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. My beautiful, intelligent daughter who posted videos about what a terrible father I am. Do you want to know who suggested she make those videos? Who helped her write the scripts? Who promised her that going viral would help her get into better colleges? Marina's face went white. The same person who's been poisoning her mind against me since she was old enough to understand adult conversations. The same person who convinced her mother that I was dangerous, unreliable, and unworthy of custody. The crowd was restless now, murmuring among themselves as they recognized names and incidents from their own lives. Small-town secrets have a way of connecting, and people were starting to put pieces together. But here's what really happened, I said, building to my finale. Tessa Morrison has been playing a game with all of your lives, and she's been winning because nobody knew the rules. Well, now you do. I pulled out the final document, a complete list of everyone Tessa had been blackmailing, with amounts, dates, and detailed descriptions of the leverage she held over each person. The mayor's gambling debts. The police chief's son's drug arrests that mysteriously disappeared. The bank president's affair with his secretary. The high school principal's falsified credentials. All of it documented. All of it used to control this town like a personal chess game. The crowd was angry now, voices rising as people recognized their own secrets being aired in public. But the anger wasn't directed at me. It was focused on the woman who'd been manipulating them for decades. And the beautiful irony, I said, grinning at Tessa's horrified face, is that she kept records of everything. Every crime, every cover-up, every dirty deal. All of it documented in her own handwriting, because she's the kind of control freak who can't resist keeping score. Travis tried to stand up, probably planning to rush the stage, but the crowd was pressing in around him. He was trapped in his seat, surrounded by people who were starting to understand exactly how they'd been played. You want to know what justice looks like? I asked the crowd. It looks like a woman who spent 30 years destroying other people's lives, finally facing the consequences of her own choices. I set the microphone back on its stand and walked off the stage as the crowd surged forward. Tessa was surrounded, trapped by hundreds of people who suddenly had questions they wanted answered. Travis was shouting something about lawsuits and lies, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Valerie was crying. Whether from shame, anger, or relief, I couldn't tell, and didn't care. Marina was staring at me with something that might have been respect, or at least recognition that her father wasn't the pathetic loser she'd been told he was. As I walked away from the festival, I could hear sirens in the distance. Not for me. I hadn't committed any crimes. But Tessa's blackmail operation was about to become a federal case, and Travis's involvement in it would probably earn him some quality time with law enforcement. The last thing I heard before I got to my car was the sound of Tessa Morrison screaming my name, her voice cracking with the kind of rage that comes from losing a game you thought you'd already won. I drove back to the Rusty Anchor, ordered a whiskey, and waited for the phone calls to start. There would be interviews with federal agents, testimony in court cases, and probably years of legal proceedings as the full scope of Tessa's operation came to light. But for the first time in 3 years, I felt like myself again. My phone buzzed with a text message. Marina. Dad, can we talk? I smiled and typed back. I'd like that. Rick poured me another whiskey and raised his own glass in a toast. To justice served cold, he said. To justice served public, I corrected. Outside, the sun was setting over Millfield, Ohio, painting the sky the color of vindication. Somewhere across town, 3 people who'd thought they'd destroyed me were learning what it felt like to have their own lives fall apart in front of an audience.
Ma'am.
They'd taken my home, my marriage, and my reputation. I'd left them with nothing but each other, and a town full of people who would never let them forget what they'd done.
Ma'am.
It was, I thought, a fair trade.